Welcome to the Moving to Denver podcast with your host, Hayley Bartlett, your Aussie agent. This is episode 2 of the Moving to Denver podcast. I am brand new at podcasting, but I thought I would give it a go so that you that are living in the Denver area or people that are thinking about moving to the Denver area get some great information, not just about Denver, but about how to handle and tackle a move to any area in the country or out of state or even overseas. So today we are tackling the second part of our moving journey. The first episode was all about my move from Australia to the United States. So feel free to go back and listen to that to find out a bit about my story and how I ended up in the USA. Today, I will be talking more about how my family made a move. So last time when I moved from Australia, it was just me and 2 suitcases to a brand new husband. Our next move was 7 years later, when I had had enough of St. Louis, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But we moved with a 4-year-old this time, and my husband, 4-year-old, a dog. So the move was a lot different than that first move when it was just me. And I'm going to take a quick sip of water here. Sorry for those that are listening and not watching. You can watch on YouTube or you can listen on your favorite iPod, not iPod. See, well, this is real, people. I'm not going to go and re-record that. You can listen on your favorite podcast streaming app. All right. So, living in St. Louis was not my favorite part of my USA journey. The weather did not really suit me. We had humidity in all year, actually. So in winter, you had icy gray skies. You know, we would get ice storms. We'd get a little bit of snow and it wouldn't melt. It would just stay on the ground. You were kind of locked inside a lot of the time. And then in summer, you get heat index warnings and you get humidity and you get allergies, and guess what? You're locked inside again. So there was a lot of inside going on in St. Louis, which is not how I really love to live my life. So the weather was one thing. I think I realized I'm not really a Midwest girl. I think I realized I do better out here, more towards the west part of the USA. I definitely know that after we've now lived 7 years in St. Louis and 7 years in Denver. So I know that I like it here much better. So we had contemplated will we move to Australia? Will I take the family to Australia? Or will we move somewhere else in the USA? So we started taking a look and Denver got on our top 3 list. I had never been there yet. There's my gypsy blood kicking in again. My husband had maybe been once or twice when he was much younger. My son had never been. So my son was 4 at this time. So we put a list together and then my husband started interviewing for jobs. And he had an interview out here in Denver. So we came out for about 5 days and stayed on the south side of Denver and explored. So we spent time, going to coffee shops, going to restaurants, going to see the shops, doing some hiking, just exploring the area to see if it was a place that we would enjoy living in. So we spent a lot of time in Littleton, in Centennial, and out there on that side of the world. We explored Red Rocks and did some hiking around there. It wasn't any serious hiking. It was kind of just put your sneakers on and walk type of hiking. But we spent time exploring the area, which is something I am so big on, and you'll hear me talk about it all the time. If you're moving to a new place, whether it be a new neighborhood in the same town or a town 15 minutes away or another state, try and get out there first to take a look around and get a feel for the place to see if it's somewhere where you would fit and somewhere where you could live. So we did that and we spent 4 or 5 days doing that and exploring. And I just had this feeling in my heart that Denver was the right place for us. I loved it. I loved the weather. I loved all the nature that was around. I loved having everything so close. I loved having some kind of city that had a little vibrancy to it. St. Louis was not that. When we lived there was not much happening in the city at all. I'm kind of a mix of a city girl that likes living a little further out, but wants access to be able to go hang out in the city. So Denver kind of gave that to me as well. So we spent that time and we went home, and my husband didn't end up getting that job that he interviewed for, but he did end up getting a job a few weeks later on the north side of Denver. So we decided, okay, this is our chance. And we packed up, and I don't know, it was another quick decision. I think it was maybe 2 months and we were out of there and on our way to Denver. Well, my husband was on his way to Denver. He would want me to tell you the truth about this. I took my son and went to Australia for 3 weeks while my husband moved us from St. Louis to Denver. So I did not have to do the moving truck or anything like that. But in my defense, we didn't actually bring a lot. We ended up selling a lot of stuff so that we didn't have a whole lot to move. And then when we arrived here, I think my husband had been here for a couple days. My son and I landed from our visit to Australia, and with jet lag, we went to IKEA, which is probably never a good idea, and bought a whole lot of furniture and things that we needed for the apartment that we were living in. So that's the other story, the apartment. I hadn't visited the north side when we were out here, so I had no idea, what cities or towns were on that north side of Denver. So my husband came back out by himself, and he chose our apartment that we were moving to. So that was a leap of faith for me at that stage, to trust that he had picked a good place to live. So he moved everything that we didn't sell, and then when I got back, we went to IKEA and kind of furnished the apartment we were living in. And he did do a good job at picking that apartment. It was on a lake, so I had water views, which is something I had missed from Australia. I don't have them now, but I had them for that couple years that we lived in that apartment, and it was very nice. And there was a elementary school down the road. My son was 4, turning 5. He was ready to go to elementary school. You're always going to find people that want to argue with you about that, but he was ready. Just a note, he's in middle school now and he's doing very well. So he was ready to go to school, and we looked at the school, and we looked at the grades, and they weren't graded the best, but we decided that we would send him to the neighborhood school anyway. And I'm glad we did, because he made good friends that lived in the apartments that we lived in, and he had kids to play with, and he was able to play all year long because the weather here. So if you're thinking of moving to Denver, and that's why you're listening to this podcast, and you're wondering when I'm going to talk more about Denver, the weather is great here, especially compared to the Midwest states. So we were in St. Louis, and we come here and we are having 60-degree days in winter with sunshine, and it feels so warm you could be in a t-shirt. So you could go outside to the playground and play. And then we get this great snowstorms that whip through as well and give us 6 to 8 inches of snow or more sometimes. And it melts in like 2 days, it's gone. So you get to enjoy the best of both worlds. You get to have some snowy, cold winter weather, and then you get to have these beautiful 60+ degree days in the middle of winter. So the weather to us was amazing. Summer, you don't have the humidity. It's a dry heat. It does get hot, but when you go into the shade, it feels so much better instantly, and you're not like sweating like you feel like you need to have a shower as soon as you walk out the door, which was what St. Louis was like for me. So the weather is one great reason to move to this area, and the weather can change 4 seasons in one day when you're in that mix of spring and fall. So always be prepared, wear layers, Always have a jacket with you in those times so that you can put it on. Even sometimes during the summer when we've been at Red Rocks concerts and a little storm has whipped through, it's gotten cold after that. So always have something on hand just in case. But the weather is amazing here and a great reason to move here. Today it is April and we are having, it feels very warm out there already, probably going to be in the high 60s today, low 70s. So I love that type of weather, that type of spring weather. So the weather is definitely a good reason to move here and something that we have enjoyed. So we moved here in summer. We got away from the humidity. We had the dry heat. We were able to go out and play, without feeling sweaty, or just go out and sit on our deck in the shade and enjoy the outdoors. And that was a huge bonus. And that was something that made me so happy when we moved here. We also found friends really quickly. I was surprised at how quickly we were able to get out and find friends. I signed up for a play group with my son and we got out there and went to the first meeting and connected with other mums instantly, which was amazing because it had taken me, it was a hard time in St. Louis finding friends. So to arrive to a brand new state and a brand new city and join a play group and instantly make some great friends, that helped so much in our move. And the interesting part about those friends that we met, and once you move to Denver, it's not so interesting, was that they were all from different places. So we had friends that had moved from San Diego, from Texas, from Canada. So you will find a lot of transplants here in Colorado, and you'll also find a lot of what seems like native hate against transplants. But really that's just on Facebook. If you can get off the Facebook pages and the Facebook groups and actually meet people here, it's not as bad as it seems on Facebook. But on Facebook you will see a lot of people that were here originally or born here or moved here when they were 2, and they get upset about the traffic now and all the building that's happened and all the growth that's happened in Denver. And I can tell you, we've lived here 7 years and I've seen that growth and I've seen that change in traffic, and I've seen the city get much bigger and the traffic get much heavier. And people tell me, well, it's still not as bad as Houston or places like that. But it is worse than it was 7 years ago. So I can imagine what the natives that have lived here forever feel like when they have to get in that traffic, especially on I-25. I try to avoid I-25 at all costs. So there's another moving tip. If you are moving to Denver, you want to live close to your workplace because the commute can get a little hectic and stressful and long, especially when there's snow, bad weather, an accident, if you have to get on 25, Interstate 25. So definitely keep that in mind when you are moving here, that you want to keep your commute low and you don't want to kind of have the hassle of having to have a long drive to work in traffic. So there you go. I gave you a tip that I love, the weather, and a tip that's not so great, the traffic. So back to our move and adjustment. So moving to another state was scary for me, even for me who had done the international move. And I think this time it was even harder because I had a son to think about and we had our dog with us. And I was wondering, like, is Jack going to be okay not being around his cousins? Is he going to be, okay not having grandma and papa there? Is he going to be okay adjusting to, he'd been at preschool for a few years, going to a different school where he doesn't know any kids. And at that point, my son was pretty shy, like one of those kids that would, hide behind my leg type business. You wouldn't imagine that he was like that if you met him now. But back then he was very shy and he had some anxiety about things. So there was a stressful moment there that I was worried about him adjusting and being okay. And it's hard to move kids. It's hard to move them from what they know, and it's hard to move them from schools, and it's hard to move them away from family and know that they will be okay. But he was okay. He made new friends eventually, and we made friends at this play group, and he enjoyed being a kid outside and riding his bike and playing at the playground without, feeling hot and sweaty all the time, or without being locked in because of ice. So he enjoyed being out and about, and he adjusted very well. And we've done a few moves since then around, the Denver area, and he's done just as well. I think do it with them when they're younger, and they adjust easier as they get older. Kids are pretty resilient, more resilient than we think they are. And that was really my main stressor, moving from one state to another. And I am a person that stresses out and gets anxiety about things. But he did fine, and he did fine when we moved this year as well, when we moved to another school district. So kids are more resilient than we give them credit for. You just need to have patience with them. You need to make it an adventure. Always make a move an adventure. And that's part of that, checking out the area, checking out the coffee shops and the playgrounds and things like that. It helps to get that adventure feeling, which makes it more exciting for the kids when you're moving to a whole new place. So he survived, and we survived, and we started riding, cycling, and I started, oh my gosh. So I was running in St. Louis, and I ran, not a big runner, but I ran a few 5Ks. Then I moved here to Denver, and I didn't, expect the whole 5280 thing above sea level to really affect me that much, but it did. I would start running and my chest would be burning, and I would be like, I can't do this. It's a struggle at the beginning to get outside and exercise here with the altitude. It does get better. Just like everything, it gets better, but it's rough at the beginning. So if you are moving to Denver and you're a runner, or you're a hard outside exercise, give yourself time to adjust. Don't just get out there and think you'll be able to do the exact same thing, because it's rough at the beginning. And see, I don't think about these things until I sit here and jabber on for a while. But the altitude is something people worry about. I often get asked that. I am a realtor. I work with people relocating a lot, and they often ask me about the altitude. And other than the running, it really didn't give me too much trouble. So, I didn't get headaches or anything like that when I first moved here. But always when you come to a place that's at high altitude, drink lots of water, wear sunscreen. We are closer to the sun here. That's another thing you'll find. So wear sunscreen, drink lots of water, and don't go straight up into the mountains. Give yourself some time in the city to adjust before you head up to the mountains. But that whole running experience was a shock to the system for me. But eventually I got used to it, and I started running outside again. Cycling, hiking. We got up into the mountains and started hiking. There's a lot of great camping spots around. Denver has a lot of good things going for it. It is a lot bigger than people expect. They come here and they don't realize how expensive it is, and they don't realize how big it actually is from, south to north. So come here first. If you're going to move here, just come here first and check it out, because it might not be the perfect place for you. It did end up the perfect place for our family. We are still here. I started a business. I established myself, and we established a life here, and I think we'll be here for a long time yet. So the move was well worth it for us. It was well worth the anxiety. It was well worth all the research we put in. We did put in research. Like I said, we had a top 3 that we were thinking about, and we researched each of those. We looked at schools, we looked at income, we looked at housing prices, rental costs at that time, because we were just renting. So we checked out all those things before we made our final decision. And it's always good to do that. A good way to do it is to call a realtor that works with relocation a lot. I'm always happy to chat and give you information. get on Facebook, get on to, if you're a mum, get on the mum boards in the area you're looking at. Mums have a wealth of information. If you're not a mum, there's other boards that you can get on, city, neighborhood boards. Also, citydata.com is a good one to get on and have a look at and ask questions on there. Just get as much information as you can on where you're moving to, and it helps with some of that anxiety, and it helps with some of that feeling a little out of sorts as you move from state to state. But I'll say it's well worth the adventure. If it's going to change your life for the better, then I always say do the move. If it's not going to change your life for the better, if you're going to end up in a worse off situation, then sometimes it's probably not a good idea. But you have to balance that worse off situation too. Is it just money that's going to be, lower? Is your lifestyle going to be better moving? For us at that time, it was about lifestyle. Like I said, I was not happy in St. Louis. I did not love the weather. I was not a Midwest girl. It was not making me happy at all, which was not making my husband happy. So for us, it was the right choice. So it's always weighing those things up, and I'm always happy to talk about that. And I have a friend who works with people that are moving to different cities and adjusting. She does life coaching with them, and I am going to ask her to jump on with me one day so that we can talk that out with her, because she's a wealth of information. She's moved from Australia to France to the USA, so she's done a lot too, and she has a lot of great insight. So we will definitely get her on. So I think that's enough rambling from me today. I hope you got some tips in there about Denver, and there'll certainly be more of those coming up in other shows. And I hope you got some tips about moving and making decisions and feeling more comfortable. Like I said, I'm always happy to chat. You can find me very easily, Your Aussie Agent. Just look me up and we'll have a chat, and I'll be back for the next show. I hope you enjoyed this one, and thank you for listening. Have a wonderful day, month, and year.